so we have some videos of Zimmerman's father speaking to the press, which I think is excellent. So let's see what he has to say and whether or not he's going to defend his son.
He called the non-emergency number first, and they asked him where he was, because he was at the rear of the townhouses, and there was no street sign.
Even though a dispatcher told Zimmerman not to follow Martin, his father says he continued walking to locate an address to give to officers.
He lost sight of the individual. He continued to walk down the same sidewalk to the next street so he could get an address for the police. He went to the next street, realized where he was, and was walking back to his... It's my understanding that at that point, Trayvon Martin walked up to him, asking, "Do you have a problem?" George said, "No, I don't have a problem," and started to reach for his cell phone. At that point, he was punched in the nose, his nose was broken, and he was knocked to the concrete. Trayvon Martin got on top of him and just started beating him in the face, in his nose, hitting his head on the concrete.
And did Trayvon Martin say anything to your son as this was going on?
After nearly a minute of being beaten, George was trying to get his head off the concrete, trying to move with Trayvon on him into the grass. In doing so, his firearm was shown. Trayvon Martin said something to the effect of, "You're going to die now, or you're going to die tonight," something to that effect. He continued to beat George, and at some point, George pulled his pistol and did what he did.
All right, so we just heard George Zimmerman's father's reaction to what happened, or his account of what happened, even though he wasn't there. So I'm guessing he got Zimmerman's side of the story. Now he's telling reporters what he thinks. Well, it's really interesting because, you know, one of the accusations was that there was a fight for the gun, that Trayvon Martin, in the middle of that so-called scuffle, he was looking for that gun, he was trying to get that gun and kill him, right? And during that struggle for the gun, Zimmerman had no choice but to shoot Trayvon Martin before he got a hold of the gun and shot him instead. But the father's account doesn't even mention that, right? The father claims that Trayvon Martin had attacked Zimmerman, and he basically had him on the ground, was banging his head on the concrete, which you guys have seen the surveillance video. There's absolutely no gash on the back of his head. His nose was not broken.
He was beating his ass. And
yeah.
then
he was fighting for his life.
You could tell he's covering all spectrums of trying to incriminate. So he's beating his ass several minutes, keeps beating him. Then he tells him, "You're gonna die tonight." I mean,
it's like a movie.
It's outlined way too. Look, it's too robotic. Then he said, "I'm Trayvon Martin, and I'm gonna kill you tonight in 2 seconds, George Zimmerman, if you don't kill me first."
It's an incredibly self-serving account of what allegedly happened. And I don't really blame George Zimmerman's dad for saying this. This is his son he's trying to protect. So I give him a pass on that. And he desperately wants to believe it. So that's okay. But here's a fact.
I'm sorry.
Okay?
Make sure you remember that fact. Can I address that? I mean, when you have some random street kid who's doing dirt in the street, and then he gets caught up and he's in the police department lying about what he did, they bring in their parents and they say, "You know what, talk to your son, get him to go ahead and confess, it'll be better for him." When it's those parents that are looking out for their kid who maybe did something dirty and maybe are up for some kind of capital murder, they tell them, "You know what, your son will be better off, just try and talk him into go ahead and confessing." Yeah, and I get it, you're as a parent, you want to protect your kid, but I'm not giving him a pass and letting him, well, I get it. I get it in a way, but let's not say that you have the right to do that. You're still impeding the justice system.
I get what Steve is saying, right?
He wants to believe it.
I know, he's in denial, and I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, don't put yourself in a situation where you're talking to the media and you're defending your son when you don't know the facts, when you don't know the reality.
Okay, first of all, I don't want to discuss the dad's motives too much because it's not that important. But look, he's the dad. He wants to believe it. Of course he's trying to defend his son. It's very natural and understandable. Moving on. The facts just don't fit the description. If you are punched in the face so hard that you're knocked to the ground, and then someone's on top of you punching you repeatedly for a minute straight, you're going to have some marks. There are no marks, none whatsoever. And this whole defense of grabbing for the gun, that's excuse number one in the whole book of excuses on how to shoot someone and pretend pretend that your life was in danger.
It's the most basic defense.
It's the most basic defense. There was a struggle for the gun, right? But here's what I want to illustrate to the viewers out there. Apparently there's some confusion. Self-defense is an affirmative defense, okay? So you have the burden of proving that it was actually self-defense. The prosecutor doesn't have the burden to prove that it was not self-defense. Same thing if you claim that it was that you did something bad because it was temporary insanity. The police or the prosecution does not have the burden of proving that you are not insane. You have to prove that you were insane, that you had this history of mental illness or whatever it may be. If you claim, I had to do it because if I didn't do it, this crime lord would have shot my head instead. Well, then you gotta prove that.
You have to prove it.
You can't just make shit up, okay? I mean, your defense can literally be, aliens from outer space controlled my mind and they made me do it. I was not acting on my own. But you know what? Then you gotta prove it. Self-defense is just like that. You have to prove it. And you can't just make stuff up and then just walk free unless you have the cooperation of a corrupt police department.
All right, let's move on to the next video. In this video, Zimmerman's father claims that he can hear that Trayvon Martin was threatening. Let's watch.
In those 911 calls, we hear what we think is a shot fired. Then you hear, help, 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 and then another shot fired. Tell me, what was that first sound?
First sound, well, one of the sounds was the door closing. It's my understanding that the police have substantiated that. There was one bullet missing. Everyone shot, except for the attorneys involved.
And what about the screaming, help, help, help?
All of our family, everyone that knows George, knows absolutely that that is George screaming. There's no doubt in anyone's mind.
If you can hear the screaming, why can't you hear Trayvon Martin saying, using those verbal threats?
I don't know.
Because he didn't make those verbal threats, that's why.
I don't know. I haven't thought of anything yet. Give me a couple minutes. I'm going to come up with something that makes no sense.
None of the defense makes any sense at all. None of it. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. And also, when it comes to the whole question of who's screaming, isn't it kind of amazing that at this point we haven't had some sort of like professional expert analysis of the voice on the tape? I know that you can find a way to figure out who that person was, but why haven't we done that yet? Mm-hmm. I would love to know. Look, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that that was Trayvon Martin. But for all the people out there who continuously want to defend Zimmerman, I would want them to have the answer.